I don't sort of see attraction events as difficult. No, preparation, opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Opportunity to deal with anything left in me,
yeah.
Opportunity to see myself more clearly, opportunity to share truth, opportunity to be honest and loving at the same time, opportunities. Really good opportunities. Like, rare to get them opportunities, they are. Many of you have heard me talk about God's truth for a long time, but you're not interested in applying it because you don't do those things. Even just those fundamental 4 things, right? So that means you're not sincere about truth. You can become sincere, but you're going to have to become sincere in order to grow, right?
And perhaps to Robert's question as well, because you said, well, if it's hard, is that good or bad? You know, initially when you engage with these things, that might feel really hard.
Isn't that going to be hard all the time for a while?
But eventually, and so that will be good hard, because you'll be aspiring towards a principle. But eventually those things will be second nature to you and they won't be hard anymore, and that'll be good.
And in fact, once the principle's written on your heart, it's going to be hard for you to do anything else other than that.
Then if someone pressures you to be in facade, or you do act in facade, that'll feel very hard.
You won't be able to do it.
And then that will be bad hard.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'd rather be completely silent than not do these things.
Yeah.
So in some situations, Mary and I might be invited to somebody's place that hasn't heard God's truth or whatever. We go there. The entire night I won't say a single thing sometimes. Right? And Mary will sometimes say afterwards, why didn't you say? Well, firstly, if I said any of those things in the situation, I'm in their house, and I said anything at all, it would be uninvited. You know, they're not inviting me to say the truth. And I feel like I can only say the truth or shut up completely. There's no other choice. So I can't argue with them in their own house, and I can't fight with them in their own house.
And you can't
I've either got a choice of leaving or not leaving, or staying. And if I've got a choice of staying, then I've only got a choice of either sitting there and just letting them believe what they believe, right? But as soon as they ask me my opinion, it's going to be great. Now I'm going to say the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if I'm not given that opportunity, then I'm not going to say anything. I'd rather not say anything.
Yeah, and it would be hard. You wouldn't enter a facade. But equally, if you found it very hard to sit there and be silent, then you know there's something that you've got to work on about the principle of free will,
or about the principle of people listening to me and feeling like they have to.
The demand to be listened to.
Or even them wanting to know me at all. Like I've sat with some of Mary's old friends for a whole evening, and they've not acknowledged me for the entire time. They haven't even acknowledged me being there. Didn't speak to me, didn't ask me a question, didn't acknowledge anything. And I've sat there the entire time and been comfortable with that. And I didn't take it out of Mary afterwards either.
Can you see that, like, if that was hard for you, you'd have to look at, well, what's the principle? Is the principle, should they listen to me? Should they engage with me? If loving principles say that they shouldn't, then this hard is good. This is hard that I have to go through, sin I need to release in order to be okay with a loving, like being in harmony with the principle.
Yeah.
Okay. And in that respect, like the law of attraction could present what seemed like difficult circumstances in order to move through the...
No, the law of attraction doesn't ever present difficult circumstances. It presents opportunities.
Opportunity. Okay. Well, but again, from the perspective of what is hard at first, might feel...
Oh, yeah, I understand you might believe they're hard, but no, they're opportunities.
Yeah, and also... if you can, get away from thinking that the situation is hard and recognise the sin in me makes everything hard.
Yeah.
It's the sin in me, that it's not this external thing that's hard, it's me fighting for my sin that's making it hard. And I don't mean that in a way of distancing yourself from bad circumstances. Like, bad things happen, and sometimes, like, it feels difficult. It's not to deny that. And sometimes people are suffering at the hands of others, and that is hard for them. But when you're in this growth phase that you're embarking on, and you're in situations, and you're aspiring for a principle, it's not the situation that is hard, it's the desire, it's the fight for the sin that's making it difficult. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This week on Wednesday, we were using a venue that Cheng organised, and just having a chat with a few of you guys, right, and some of the people from last week, and a minister who gave us the use of the venue. It was a pastor from the Episcopal Church. Yep. And he wanted to meet with me and Mary. He wanted to meet with us both. So we met with him. Now, during the meeting, he was quite frequently condescending, quite frequently, what would you say, questioning, but condescending, quite frequently not listening to any answer given. But
it was sort of like a job interview for Jesus.
It was a job interview for Jesus.
You know, it's like, well, what's your answer to A? What's your answer to B? You know, what's your answer to C?
And because I didn't answer the way he expected, then I wasn't Jesus anymore, right? That's the underlying view.
He reserved himself a lot, so he wasn't.
He didn't tell us at any time his opinion.
No. Yeah.
At any
He wasn't
time.
transparent.
He wasn't transparent. He didn't realise that he was sinning with regard to truth. He said to me, in fact, one of the things I said to him is the truth will set you free during part of the discussion. And he said, I agree with that, but he wasn't being truthful right at the time he said it. Didn't see his own sin. And didn't see most of his other sins either that he was committing to the very person, ironically, that he says he believes in. Right? I find that quite ironic. But because he doesn't believe I am Jesus, he thought he could do that with me. Would he have done it with Jesus, the real Jesus that he thought? Well, of course he would have, because at the end of the day, he was inclined to do it to the least of his brothers, me. So he was going to be inclined to do it to the person he has the most respect for as well. And this is the truth. If it's in you emotionally, you will be inclined to do it with everyone you meet, right? Now, in that conversation, I could have got all uppity and all upset with him and everything. I found it to be a fun and interesting conversation, right? And I enjoyed myself. Perhaps Mary didn't enjoy herself as much as I did.
Yeah, but it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
It was just an interesting situation. Yeah.
It was the very first time I've been interviewed by a pastor for a job. So I found that interesting.
And, in comparison to a lot of so-called Christians who send us emails or I meet in the supermarket, he was really nice in comparison. You know, he didn't project a lot of judgment at us.
So I disagree with Mary on that, because the truth is that I feel there's a lot of judgment and.
Well, you know what I'm getting at though? Hatred and death wishing. He wasn't doing that.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't doing that.
So for me, that's like
normally, normally
nice.
From Christian ministers we get hatred and death wishes, but in this case he didn't do that. So he was kind enough to
condescending for sure.
Yeah, but he was kind enough not to do those other more damaging things. Yeah. But why would you if you have dealt with your own sin and you've got to the stage where you love people, even when they're sinning towards you, you'll still feel love for them. So I'm looking at the guy, and while he's asking me these questions and while I'm answering, and I'm going, it's going to be very interesting in the future what happens to you. You're one of the first people on earth, first ministers on earth, who's interviewed Jesus. He didn't listen to a word I said, of course, but at some point in the future, he's going to wonder, how could I have been in that situation where the very person that I say I follow, I was interviewing, and in the very situation, I was treating the very person I say I follow in a condescending manner, and yet if I had just listened, I might have learnt a lot of things. Yeah.
Undercover boss.
Undercover boss.
No, that's one of the things we talked about. Jesus is not the
Exactly.
boss. Jesus is
He did
no
ask me that
hierarchy.
question.
Yes, yeah.
We talked about hierarchy and things like that, you know.
And he did give us space in his church to use for free.
He did.
So,
Yeah. So we actually had a meeting with, what was it, about 25 of us there, wasn't there? In the process. Of course, he must have, the job interview, I think, happened to see whether I was innocent enough to allow for that, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it was just an interesting process, and I thought, yeah, it's going to be fascinating what happens in the future. The beauty of situations like that is you first get to see how you're going yourself.
Yeah.
You get to see, I got upset about this, or I got upset about that, or he didn't listen to me there and I was upset about that, or whatever.
Yeah, I saw things about myself like, I want to shut down because I can feel he's critical. I want to withdraw, whereas Jesus was very, just like he'd be talking to one of you guys about God's truth, because it was a kind of a doctrinal conversation, wasn't it? Referring to different points of Christian
different
doctrine.
Bible verses and
the
doctrine.
pastor was asking.
Yeah.
And Jesus just answered him like he'd answer any one of you guys. So he was very open with the truth and very explanatory.
Yeah.
And I could see, I've still got areas where I want to protect myself here, or I'm more worried about how I'm going to be viewed rather than loving the truth. So it was a good moment to check in with where I'm at. Okay, I've got to look more at those things.
And I'm going like, this is the very first time I've attracted a person that I can actually have a sane conversation with for 1 hour. We were there for 1 hour. About doctrinal matters, that the person is a pastor, like a minister.
It was kind of cool. Like,
it was kind of cool.
He'd be like, but what about such and such? And Jesus would go, in John verse whatever, that I said that, and this is what that really means. And he's like, well, what about this other thing? And then it was a really cool, because he's dedicated his life, like I said to him, this is your whole life. And he was open and, I don't know, he was asking...
He didn't listen to any of the answers, but...
because they didn't match with what he thought
correct.
you should say about
But
things.
the fact that it even happened was pretty amazing. You know what I mean? Pretty amazing. Yeah. So, attraction event, and purpose was, firstly, to help him, but also to help us.
Yes.
Right? Prepare us. Future events, prepare us. The more of those things we do, the more prepared we become. Yeah. Yeah, it helps us. So I don't sort of see attraction events as difficult. No, preparation, opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Opportunity to do with anything left in me, opportunity to see myself more clearly, opportunity to share truth, opportunity to be honest and loving at the same time, opportunities. Really good opportunities. Like, rare to get them opportunities, they are. And so, the truth is that if I'm focused on the principle in the moment, I'm going to say, he says, so first question was, so you guys are saying to Jesus and Mary? Yes. And then he's go, okay, and then we went from there.
We've had a couple of conversations like that when we got to Canadian customs this time.
Yeah.
We were pulled aside, and exactly the same question. So you guys are saying you're Jesus and Mary Magdalene?
Yes.
So just people from the public talking to us about and asking us about our first century experience, which is really...
Yeah, eventually after he got through the officiousness, I suppose, the last quarter of an hour of the discussion was all about some principles like love, truth and our life in the first century and everything. We're talking to a customs official in the airport, right?
And he's like, well, if you guys were really there, like, what was it like?
What was it like?
What was it like? Yeah.
I've got you here, I can ask you.
He literally said that. You're
ahead.
standing right here, tell me.
So these give opportunities, right?
For us as well as the people.
Yeah, for us too, to deal with whatever we're dealing with, officiousness and officials and how they can often get you in trouble, as well, can't they?
Well, he was holding the fate of our entry into Canada in his hands, literally.
Yeah, so... And also the rest of our trip, ironically, because we came from Canada to here. So it was an interesting sort of a process, I thought. Really good for truth.
But I can tell you, 10 years ago, both of those situations would have been so hard for me, so hard. I probably wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you rationally. I'd be curled up in a ball somewhere, freaking out. And so this is what I mean about what's hard today. If it's good hard, I'm striving for the principles, I'm going to work through whatever it is. Eventually that same situation won't be hard anymore, and doing the sinful thing in that situation will be hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll be bad hard.
Yeah.
But you need the principles. You need to aspire for the principle. Otherwise you will go, is this good hard or bad hard? Like, should I, is this a sign that, is it like when I'm touching the hot stove, this is bad for me? Or is this a sign that, no, I've just imbibed something that's been bad for me and it's got to come out now? Yeah.
So what's number 2?
Just so you know, Jay, it's half one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Mary. You said that soul aspiration is a feeling process. Does that mean that it's possible that we could have right now soul aspirations that we maybe don't know cognitively yet, that this has to do with a relationship with God?
Completely possible.
Or longing for a soulmate or passion or truth?
Completely possible, yes. Just because your mind is not able to sense something, it doesn't mean that it's not there. Your mind is really incapable of measuring emotion. So you can settle with your feelings and you would know it's there, though. Right? An example of that is the minister we met on Wednesday. I could feel in him that his soul does not agree with the questions he was asking us. His soul doesn't agree. He had different aspirations in his soul than what he had in his mind. His mind aspirations were driven by his intellectual beliefs, and his soul aspirations were driven by his emotional beliefs. Right? So that's interesting. Every person you meet is like that, pretty much, where they might have aspirations in their soul that don't exist in their mind and they're not aware of. If you read the Paget messages carefully, there's many times when we've said that. Oh, that person thinks they this way, but their soul feels very differently. You see, a lot of people learn a belief system on earth, whatever the belief is, about love or about religion or some other thing. They learn that belief system and they have a lot of reasons why they want to retain that belief system. But in their heart, their emotions, they are very suspicious of their own belief systems. An example of that is the average Christian does not accept the Trinity in their heart. They just don't. They can't see it being logical. They can't see it being truthful. It doesn't make any sense to them. And in their heart, they feel God would make sense, and therefore, in their heart, they don't really believe in the Trinity. This is why they're going to argue so much for it in their mind as a belief, because in their heart, they're not even convinced themselves yet that it's true. You follow? It doesn't make any sense to their heart. In their mind, they are absolutely committed to the belief. Absolutely committed. So there's an example of where the heart is very different to what's in the mind. This is why your mind's pretty useless, right? Because at the end of the day, it has a whole heap of things in it, many of which are just indoctrinations. That they are affected by your soul condition, obviously, the emotions you're trying to avoid. So an example of that is, if I, as a Christian, believe that the Trinity is not true, and all of my family and all of my friends are Christians, and they all believe that my changing my belief on God's nature, what makes up God as a Trinity, I'm no longer accepting Jesus is God, I'm no longer accepting the Holy Spirit is God, and I just accept one God. If I do that, they will view it as blasphemy, and in many religious faiths, they will excommunicate you if you believe that. Now, can you see, in my soul I might be very suspicious of the belief, but in my mind I'm going, but if I accept what my soul is telling me about this belief, I have now got a whole heap of other soul problems to address of all these people attacking me and my family no longer loving me and nobody caring for me anymore, and I haven't got the security of my family looking after me financially or emotionally anymore, and we can't have family gatherings because they've all excommunicated me, and I go through all of that immense amount of soul pressure, and I go, I might as well just stay holding on to the belief.
Well, I'll use my mind to convince myself that my soul suspicion isn't there. So your mind.
So I deny my soul further.
Yeah. Your mind can be a big agent of illusion in your life, depending on other soul aspirations that you have. You might be invested in not seeing, wow, I really am interested in this God character, because your whole social group will think, oh, now you've got religion, how boring, and so you sort of can try to deny that aspiration is even there, because there's another aspiration to hold on to the approval of others.
Thank you.
Or to avoid their disapproval.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yes, it is true that your soul, you may not be aware at all about your soul condition or its true sense or aspiration even, right? Of course, that is only going to be made more difficult, or you can say it's easier to deny your soul aspiration the less emotion you feel. Because remember, the brain of your soul is your emotions. So the less sensitive you become to emotion, the easier you are going to find denial of the soul's feelings. Because the brain of the soul is its feelings, its emotions.
And conversely, the more you feel, the harder it's going to be to deny your aspirations.
Exactly.
They'll become very apparent to you.
Yep.
Whether they're positive aspirations or negative.
Or unloving ones, yeah. All right, well, it's probably time. It must be half past. It's probably time for us. Now, we're not going to continue this conversation after the break.